Oops. So I already cut that part out. Oh my goodness, Devin, so sorry.
Thank goodness for editing, right?
Isn't it fantastic? Because then we
Yeah.
also get to be way more natural.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
I appreciate that.
me too. Well, hi everyone. Welcome back to the Teach Outdoors podcast. I'm your host, Lauren MacLean, and this week I'm so excited to be joined by Devon Karchut. She has been a pediatric physiotherapist for 15 years and is the owner of Nature Play, which is an outdoor play and therapy program in Calgary. And she is a fierce advocate for outdoor play opportunities for all children. She is a passionate proponent of outdoor play being an essential component of healthy child development and a key element to connecting wellness, regulation, and learning in school settings. Devin is also the mom to an 11-year-old child who spends her free time roaming the mountains and nearby nature all around Calgary. Now, I first had the pleasure of hearing Devin speak at the Take Me Outside National Outdoors Conference in Banff. We think it was about 2 years ago now. And I'm so excited that we're reconnecting here today on the podcast. So thank you so much for being here today, Devin. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Yeah, and I'm very excited to get to chat with you. After meeting you in person and then following your work and getting your books and your podcast early this kind of school year have been really helpful for just thinking about how we want to start things off on a good note with our kids.
Oh,
So,
thank
yeah.
you. Well, I can't wait to hear a bit more about your journey. So, I guess firstly, let's just start with, what inspired you to start nature play and bring your physiotherapy practice outdoors?
Yeah, so there's not a lot of people doing what I'm doing.
Hmm.
There's some outdoor OT programs throughout the States and Canada, but to my knowledge, I don't know if anyone else has had like the physio lens to things. So
Yeah.
I started out in early intervention, so working in preschools and going to people's homes, um, working on early gross motor skills, that sort of thing. I've worked at some schools specific for kids who have special needs. Um, and then in this early intervention landscape, I had this great boss who, whenever I would have an idea of something to try, she was like, sure, give it a go.
Nice.
And so my idea was, how about we take kids and parents outside and we do things like snowshoeing and geocaching, but we do it within the city so it feels accessible. Um, and then really seeing a difference in these kids that I had seen in an indoor setting
Mhm.
and seeing them in this whole new light outside. Um, and it just kind of went from there. And started thinking about how can we connect what we know about the outdoors and what it does for children with this population. I think that maybe doesn't get outside as
Right.
much.
Well, and
So
you
that kind of,
also,
oh,
yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to say, you also live in a place where it does get quite cold. You get
Yes.
lots of snow.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. And we're also a very diversity. So we have lots of
mhm.
newcomers that come from warmer places, and the weather is pretty shocking to
Yeah.
them. And even, I grew up here, it's still shocking to me every winter, but we figure out our ways to get through it. So,
Wonderful. So can you sort of give us like an overview about what a typical day looks like for some of your, I don't want to say clients, but your kiddos in your program?
yeah, so we have a few different types of programs. So we have one program we call Forest Play. So it's kind of like a forest school, but not school. So
Mm-hmm.
really recreation focused, play focused. So groups of kind of 15 to 20 kids come, usually around 3 hours in the forest. So we use an urban forest, which is great. So some people can ride their bikes there, or you could even take the bus there if you needed to. So our days are built around choice. So we kind of present an idea, but the kids get to take it kind of however they want. So lots of big body movement, tree climbing, fort building, imaginative play. We have a little stream that runs through our site. So they're always in the mud and the water.
Yeah.
So that's kind of our forest play program. And then we have our therapy groups. So that's for kids who might have goals specific to areas of occupational therapy, physiotherapy, or we run some communication groups and some social skills groups. And those are small group settings, but same thing, all outside in kind of our nearby nature.
Hmm.
And those are led by therapists with support staff. And things are a little bit more focused around meeting goals, but all in a very playful way. So lots of the kids don't even know they're at like therapy. They're just, they
Right.
call it forest camp and they
Yeah.
come. So they get extra support where needed, and then strategies around improving what area they're kind of working
That's
on.
that's
So
so interesting. I find this so fascinating. And do you see a difference with how the kids respond, in terms of therapy and in terms of play when they're out in nature versus in an indoor program?
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
remember years ago, it was a Friday afternoon. It was like speech and movement group. So it was me and a
Hmm.
speech path. And the kids would come after school on a Friday indoors in this room, and it was awful.
Oh.
It was awful. We were trying to get them to do specific things to build skills, and like they just wanted to run because they've been in school all week.
Yeah.
Um, and it was like I was so overstimulated and they were so
Hmm.
overstimulated. Um, I don't know how effective it was. We really tried. As opposed to, I have a same size group of kids outside, but all of a sudden they can move how they need to move. And if they're loud, it doesn't sound as loud.
Right.
Um, and I think the other piece is play. When we talk about play, sometimes how adults talk about play is not really play. And I think there's a place for, following instructions and doing structured activities.
Hmm.
But I think the big realization is when we let kids actually play and we kind of step out of the way a bit,
Yeah.
and follow their lead. That's actually when we get the biggest breakthroughs. Um, which like goes against like adults' need for control and
Yeah.
needing goals and outcomes and that sort of thing. So I think that's been the biggest shift and realization that that's where the magic lies. Real true play, I
Or
guess.
true play. And so
Mhm.
that's when you're working in the school setting, right? So you're working with those kids, sort of helping guide these gross motor and fine motor, I'm sure, like all types of movement skills within an outdoor play context.
Mhm.
So the I'm just wondering, are those educators that you're also working alongside, is it sort of seen as an extra, or or is everybody sort of on the same page that this is foundational to the students' learning and it's foundational to their development and their regulation skills?
Yeah, so like our these groups are actually not connected with school, so they are like private and outside of school.
Okay.
So like the parents have bought in, and this is something that's important to them. But then we also do work in schools where we come in, and we're not coming in with like specific therapy, like OT or physio necessarily.
Hmm.
We're coming in to help coach around like linking play and movement in nature in the outdoors to how that can support all kids in their learning. So we do that with professional development, and then we come and do sessions with the kids where the staff are there, and we do follow up to kind of link everything together for the teachers. And there's a range in how schools feel about that for sure.
Right.
Some do feel like it's an extra, or they don't have
Hmm.
time for it, or it's taking away from the curriculum, or
Yeah. Yeah.
cold out, or
Yeah.
harder. But all these things that you have heard too, right? As like the barriers
Yeah.
to getting out. But
Yeah. But the nice thing that I can just see it syncing so nicely with the work you would do is with the PHE curricular outcomes. And I know
Mhm.
we're from different provinces, but I'm sure there's still so many connections and similarities between our physical health and education program. But I know our school would jump at the opportunity to be able to work with someone who actually knows what she's talking about and how to, you know, well, I'll speak about me personally. So I have a background in sports. I used to play field hockey for Canada. So I am, I would say, competitive. That's my nature. But when I see, you know, elementary type skills at the elementary age, I mean, I have a hard time breaking down a skill basic enough to be able to scaffold it.
Mhm.
Reading, writing, math, no problem. I know how to scaffold that. But it's so natural to move in big ways and coordinated ways that I find it difficult to break down a skill. So if I were able to work with someone like you to find different ways of setting up games to help with
Mhm.
jumping skills. I
Mhm.
mean, how do you teach a child how to jump with 2 feet? It can be quite difficult,
It can
um,
be, yes. Yeah.
right? So now I sort of want to pick your brain about, again, from that physio lens, how to scaffold these sort of movements or sensory experiences that are often missing from a child's day, which is why we need to work on it and help develop it.
Yeah, and I think too, like OTs are often thought of as the sensory people.
Mm,
And I do work with OTs, and we all kind of all have different backgrounds that we meld into this when we're working with schools. Um, but you can't really separate the motor from the sensory, really. Like it's all things
mm,
that are happening in your brain, and how when you move, all your sensory systems are being activated, and like how you interpret senses impacts how you move. So, um,
right.
like physios don't get a lot of attention in education. I think we're always
Yeah.
like the lowest funded and there's the least number of us because I think people don't connect why that's important. Like if a child can walk, then why do they need a physio?
Yeah.
And I think too, like the movement piece connecting to regulation and behavior and even how our brain is functioning to learn. I think
Hmm.
there's a real gap in that knowledge. And I didn't even learn a lot of that stuff until I was on the job. And
Hmm.
I was kind of like, why didn't I know this before? And like, I think most teachers don't know it. Like I did
Yeah.
a professional development session last week before our teachers went on strike, and one teacher like was talking about the brain and right and left side and how crossing midline supports development of reading and all this stuff. And she's like, "Hold up, you're blowing my mind here." And it was like relatively, it wasn't like super complex stuff, but
Hmm.
it was like be really helpful if we knew these things.
Yeah.
Um, so I think for teachers, if I can connect movement, regulation, behavior, and learning, then all of a sudden, maybe it's not this extra thing. Maybe it's this thing that can allow kids to reach their potential within school.
Right. And I think the other piece is I'm assuming, so correct me if I'm wrong, I'm assuming if a child, has these areas where they need a little support in terms of either movement or regulation skills, it affects other areas that would impact their academic success, their social skills.
Okay.
And so, again, if we can find those ways that would sort of show to the parents or the educators, this is going to have a really positive effect on the entire school day. So again, it's not
Mm-hmm.
an extra. This
Mm-hmm.
is the piece that we need to work at, the access point, and then build from there. So if we had, a student that had an interesting gait as they ran, for instance. How would play or how would physio then take that play experience to help develop either running or jumping? Like we've all had the students where they jump and you think, well, that's an interesting way to jump.
Mm-hmm.
Not in a judgmental way, but in a, oh darn, like I need to help them land properly so they don't get hurt,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and it's tricky because all those skills kind of develop at different times for different kids.
Mhm.
And then, with gait, like we all walk a little bit differently,
Yep,
right? And it's like, how do you know when it's detrimental or not? So, like, if we
right.
go into a school, like, we're not looking at specific kids, we're looking at giving these opportunities to all kids. But I think like the
Hmm.
red flags for me is with like say a motor skill or a sensory aversion or sensitivity is like if it's impacting them socially. That's such a
Yeah.
big thing. So say someone runs really funny and then they can't keep up in a game of tag and then they're getting picked on, then like
Hmm.
that is something like that you could impact with the child. So giving them an opportunity to play in a natural space where the ground is all uneven and they're having to step over things and they're having to be more aware of their movements. Well,
Hmm.
that's actually a really easy intervention where the whole class could go and do that. And you're not setting that child apart and you're not, because other thing too, like if you're pointing out the things that are difficult for them and focusing on that, sometimes that can make kids really anxious, right? Like if a child has
Totally.
horrible handwriting and you're like, your handwriting's bad, like let's just handwrite over and over, right?
Right. And look how good Devon's handwriting is. Lauren, yours is terrible, right? That comparative piece, we don't want it to make it that obvious for these sensitive, often kids.
Exactly. And then I think say when we're playing in nature, then, the ground is a bit tricky to move over for everyone.
Hmm.
And all of a sudden, all the kids are paying more attention to where their feet are landing and if they have to lift their foot up high or if something's a little bit wobbly. So it makes us
Hmm.
all focus in on our skills. So,
Yeah.
and I think too, like I'm thinking back to a school we were at a couple of weeks ago. We were talking about communities and how we all have things that we're good at and maybe not as good at. And I was
Hmm.
like, who's like really good at soccer and who's really good at gymnastics um, and how that's what makes us a great community, right? Is we all have our strengths and our things that are trickier. Um, and watching the kids play in this forest, there was some kids who were really scared of bugs,
Yes.
like really scared.
Yeah.
And there was some kids who were nervous on uneven ground. And there were some kids who wanted to be the leaders and they were really good at that in some ways. But then in other ways, there was things that were like sharing was more difficult for them. Um, some kids knew a lot about the trees that were in the space we were in, and they were really like proud to talk about that.
Yeah.
Um, but it just seemed like, when we're in natural spaces, that it's like that great equalizer
Yeah.
that we're not the same, but we all have things that we shine at and things that are more difficult. And I think sometimes in our traditional like work, if we're doing worksheets and sitting in rows, um, your challenges are so apparent, and
Hmm.
if we're only teaching in one way or we're only playing or learning in one way, those few kids are going to look really good and everyone else is going to be demoralized. So
Yeah.
like we hope that when they leave the session, like everyone feels good about something that
Yeah.
happened in that
Yeah.
day. Um, and it was neat to see them building their little community
I
of all
love
their
that.
different strengths. And um, yeah, there was like, I had kindergartners, there was like 5 boys that just needed to run and they could run and they
Yeah.
still were like being imaginative and coming up with games, but like they just seemed so happy that they weren't getting in trouble for running.
Yeah.
They really needed to run.
So I want to actually know a bit more about these, the 3-hour sessions that you're doing with these kiddos, because it sounds so open-ended
Mhm.
that I would love to sort of get a sense of, what those 3 hours look like. And, for selfishly, so I could sort of mimic that play and those experiences for my own grade 2, 3
Mhm.
students in the school setting and,
Yeah, and I think
activities and how it supports all this movement.
yeah, so and we don't have a curriculum and we're not responsible to anyone because we are recreation. So
Hmm.
as long as we're keeping our little ones safe, we are good to go. So that taking that pressure off is really nice. But then I think if I looked at what happens in our day and I
Yeah,
looked at a kindergarten grade one curriculum, I would be like drawing lines all over the place of the connections.
yeah,
Um, so I think the key is the environment for the inspiration. So we're super lucky in the spot that we have with our little stream, and we have a duck pond, and we have little, like, we call them our tree tunnels, these like giant lilac bushes that the kids can crawl through, um, and having uneven ground and all these things. Those are like the sparks to play. But then in our work with schools, we can show that you can play anywhere,
yeah.
right? But there is something magical about having a really neat green space, which I know you have
Yes.
some forests close to
Yeah.
your school, which you're very lucky. Um, so yeah, it is pretty open ended. So our kind of structure is when the kids come in, we have something kind of open ended for them to explore. So it's our welcome activity. And the idea is they can engage how they need to engage. So if they just need to sit and have a snack, they do that. If they need to run around, they do that. And then if they want to engage in whatever we have, they can do that as they're
Hmm.
ready. Um, and that just kind of helps everyone be regulated and like tune into what they need in that moment before. We used to just have everyone sit down on our like stump circle and get to it. And
Yeah.
that was really hard because they were coming in from all different experiences at the start of their day and they all need something different. So we have our welcome activity and then we sit and we do like a really short circle, um, songs, stories. Sometimes we do little like team building games depending on the age of the kids.
Hmm.
Um, and again, that kind of circle time depends, like the length depends on the age of the kids. So it's never very long though. But like
Yeah.
we do stuff with toddlers and it's like 6.5 minutes or
Yeah.
something like that. Like,
Yeah.
um, and then we propose kind of an idea or an invitation, and then we have things set up for them to explore that idea, but they don't have to. We're trying to get away from like themes and
Yeah.
more offering a variety of things that will match kind of um, what they're interested in or what we've seen their needs are. So if you have a group that's like needs lots of lifting and pushing and pulling,
Hmm.
then we're bringing lots of large loose parts. If there's other kids who've been super into, looking at all the bugs underneath the stumps, and we bring our magnifying glasses. Um, but kind of using nature as the stage. And
Right.
then too, we've been trying to bring less materials along than we typically have been.
Hmm.
And we find they're even more imaginative with
Yeah.
with less.
Yep.
Um, yeah, and then our planning, like we plan in advance, but I guess it's kind of emergent in that we go with the flow with
Yeah.
what they're needing and what they're interested in. We really like books, so
Yeah.
our book is often the spark to what we're going to do. But
Yeah.
like we'll do the same kind of we call it our curriculum, but it's pretty loose, like the whole week with different groups, but it would look totally different for
Yeah.
different groups depending
Yeah.
on the makeup of the kids. So
Yeah. Well, and what I love about the structure here is that you've given lots of choice for every kid to make a choice about what they're interested in because we know that play and is so different for every child. And so you've given examples of how to support preferences on ways to find movement and to engage in play in outdoor settings. So again, that's going to make me instantly think about the idea of inclusion in these
mhm.
groups because it seems like a very inclusive way to again, organize an outdoor program. Are there any other elements of how you have inclusion sort of at the forefront of when you're planning?
Yeah, so we actually, I think word is out that we are able to kind of be welcoming to all kids.
Mm-hmm.
So thinking, and I know inclusion encompasses a lot of different things, but from like a abilities perspective, like there's kids who've like been booted out of preschools that come to
Yeah.
us and they do just fine,
Yeah.
um, because they are kids who need to move.
Yeah.
And then I think behavioral things in our little ones are often, well, they're not even behavioral often. they're they're labeled as behavioral, but
Yeah.
I think it's like unmet needs or skills that need a little bit more support.
Yeah.
So kids maybe who have struggled in other settings, like we have one class this year that's just, it's busy. It's just a busy class.
Yeah.
So we got, one of our OTs came and consulted for a couple of the kids, and we brought in an extra staff. So instead of telling those kids they had to leave,
Yeah.
because technically, like, to come to that group, you're supposed to be able to play safely within a 6-to-1 ratio and follow instructions, and like they actually can't.
Yeah.
But instead of booting them out, we brought in some support.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and then as far as like other like inclusion, we have kids, we have one little girl with CP, we have lots of kids who are on autism spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
We have some kids who wear masks, and I feel like, I think this inclusion diversity thing has been so front of mind for us, and I can't speak for other people. If they feel welcome,
Mm-hmm.
um, I would like to think that they do, and we do get a variety of people coming, which I hopefully tells us we're on the right path. We're by no means perfect, but
Yeah.
we do have quite a diverse, like culturally diverse population coming to our programs too, which always makes me happy. And then yeah, just thinking about like financial inclusion and all these pieces too.
Yeah.
Like we have a support, like send a kid to camp fund.
Good.
And then I think going into the schools has been a nice way to like maybe reach people who wouldn't come to a program like us. Because sometimes we're like preaching to the converted a bit in our like forest programs.
Right.
Um, but I think when we go out to the schools and we can bring our ideas out to the broader community, I think it's a way to reach
Yeah.
more.
And so when you go consult with schools, don't give away too much because people should contact you for some for some help. But what are sort of the big takeaways that teachers would get?
Yeah, so we like to start off with a teacher professional development session, so like a couple of hours with the teachers.
Hmm.
And I really like to do that part, to kind of explain what we're doing and why. I do like kind of what you would have seen me do in BAMF, like
Hmm.
just a really brief, I call it my sensory motor 101, like what are like the basics of the sensory systems and how are they impacted with play and with outside and with nature and how that connects to learning. um, and then I think the biggest takeaway that we've been trying to kind of focus in on this year has been value of play, true play, because teachers don't always see kids playing for
Yeah.
extended periods of time. And I think, like, people say you need 45 minutes to get deep into play
Yeah.
and see all the magic come out. But as us as adults trained in child development, if we can observe kids deeply in play, we can learn all sorts of things that are then going to help us with our lesson planning or how we're going to address our curriculum. So when we watch the kids play, we observe how they move, what their sensory needs are. We observe how they're interacting with their peers, how they're communicating.
Hmm.
We observe what are they super, super interested in, what's meaningful to them, because those are like our hooks,
Hmm.
right? And if we can take all that information, link it to curriculum, and then when we're planning our lessons for our groups, if we can think about all those things, we've got them, right? We've
Yeah.
got them regulated, we have them engaged. They're going to retain the information because it's meaningful to them.
Yeah.
So I think the biggest thing is communicating that observing play is like the secret magic
Right.
that can help you make your learning meaningful. Um, so we have, I don't know, everyone thinks differently. So I have my observation chart, and then I have my mind map of like, this is what I observed, and here's the links to the curriculum. And then I don't have a visual for this yet, but I'm hoping some teacher designs it for me because you guys are the ones who do your lesson planning and have such great ideas of connections. But like, we know all these things. So now when we're like planning to address this area of the curriculum, like, how can we expand on these ideas?
Yeah. Well,
Um,
Dr. Shelley Moore, she's got a great sort of framework that is, watch a child, get to know them. You sort of put the information, I guess, in this graphic organizer. And then now that I know Devon, I can now figure out ways, again, to hook into this lesson. I
yeah,
know what my access point is going to be because I know all my students now.
yeah,
So, yeah, definitely for anybody that's listening, I know I talk about Shelley Moore a lot because I think her ideas are phenomenal in terms of
I love
inclusion.
Shelley Moore also. Yes,
Right? Yeah.
yes,
It's hard not to.
I know it's true. Yes,
Yeah. And I'm making the connection when you're talking about the importance of play and watching them and then pulling the curriculum out in a way that'll hook them. Last week, we were outside, we're having some sort of free forest exploration time. And I heard this bird that haven't really heard in our area before. So I called everybody in quite frantically because I was super excited. I'm like, everybody, come on, come on, come on. I'm sort of flapping my arms. And I feel like I probably even shared this on the last podcast episode. So I apologize for my repetition. But we heard a merlin. And then we did end up seeing it, sort of chasing after some small songbirds. But it was so interesting to see its flight pattern and how different it was from the songbirds sort of flight pattern. So now, I pointed that out. Look at the different ways that they fly. And now all the students are running around the forest, sort of imitating the flight patterns of these birds. So are they going to remember the patterns of flight? That is not in our curriculum, but patterning is, getting to know your local animals is, and they are learning it through observing and then playing, like total gross motor skills. It was
really.
so fun to watch. It was
That's
amazing.
amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And you think about the difference between that and if you were like, okay, let's be birds. Like you made the flap
Yes.
around, right? Like it's they're doing the same thing,
Yeah.
but what you're getting out of it is totally different. And then the kids who need to be wild birds can be wild, and the like little quiet birds can be quiet birds. And like maybe it evolves into nest play, or they start
Oh,
moving in
yeah.
different ways, or they'll look at birds in a different way,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They're like become the bird,
Yeah.
but your entry point and your excitement in the moment, that's like the beautiful thing about nature, right? Like
Yeah.
that you can react in those moments where something
Hmm.
unexpected happens. And that just made me think too of like, there's so many kids who they're very rigid and things need to happen in a certain order and they need to like,
Yes.
so we try and provide predictability, but like nature's this gentle way to be like, oh, sometimes there's not a Merlin,
Yeah.
sometimes there is. And when there is, let's stop what we're doing and go,
Yeah.
wow, this is really exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. We have to have, in years past, I'd wear my lanyard outside that has my whistle in case there's a bear. And it also has, pick symbols on it. And
Mhm.
one of them is pause. And that's to help if a student struggles with transitions. If I'm going to, interrupt, oh, everybody stop what you're doing. We're going to go look at this bird. Pause, we had to teach meant we will return to what you're
Mhm,
doing.
mhm, mhm.
It's okay. Let's not panic. We won't have a breakdown. We will come back to this. That is being paused. And then we would have an arrow. So we're going to go do something else. And then we would do the arrow back. And then we would
Mhm,
unpause. So,
mhm.
again, you do sort of have to know the learners in your context because there are going
Yeah.
to be a lot of interruptions, a lot of surprises when you're outside, which
Mhm.
is exciting for many, but not for all. And
Yeah.
so just having that ready in case you need to have that as a support.
Yeah, and we talk a lot about that transition piece. Like
Hmm.
we try and like minimize our transitions,
Yeah.
but there will be transitions,
Hmm.
not always planned. And yeah, how can we make those as yeah,
Yeah.
gentle as possible? But I think your point of reminding kids they can return to it.
Yeah.
And even sometimes at the end of the day, some kids don't want to go home and they have little meltdowns because they're like
Yes.
really into what they're doing. But reminding them, yes, that they can come back next week or tomorrow and they can pick up where they left off. And they're like,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's a lot thinking of all these different little people and all their different needs. But I think a lot of those strategies, like your picture symbols,
Hmm.
they help all kids.
They do. Yeah. Yeah.
Those
Yeah.
kind of universal strategies, I think.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah. Devon, I could talk to you probably for another 2 hours easily. But, ironically, in a little bit, I actually have a physio
Oh,
appointment.
there you go. There you go.
I'm still working on, I've got what is it called? Tendinopathy on my
Oh yeah.
Achilles. I've got this
Ooh,
hilarious little bump it's like a little extra shelf on my Achilles.
is that a field hockey thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Love those lasting injuries.
Yeah.
Um, but is there anything that I haven't asked you sort of as we wrap up? Do you have any other tips for people who are listening about play and about movement outdoors?
I think I would just say allowing for like those extended periods of play, and knowing that even if we're trying to work on specific goals, that just being out in a natural space and giving kids time can still be really beneficial.
Yeah.
And then we can kind of like shift our way in to those teachable moments, I guess, when we're working on specific things would
Hmm.
be one. And then I guess just remembering how regulating nature is for all of us, and thinking about all those different things that we need. So as adults, we might go out to nature to, sit and have a quiet moment, but a kid might need to go and lift a lot of heavy things in
Yeah.
nature. Um, so it's kind of that place where everything, all of our needs can be met. And I think to not forcing things so that the kids who are nervous about bugs or nervous
Hmm.
about mud, that we're starting really, really gently and not forcing things because that's when we're going to increase anxiety in kids. So just starting small with those connections to nature.
It's a lot easier to start small as opposed to having to backtrack and, oops, sorry, we went too far.
Yeah, yeah,
Right?
exactly.
That is
Mhm.
tough.
Yeah,
I I mean, Devin, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, all of your experience, and your very clear passion for helping kids move and thrive outside. You've given me a lot to think about, especially how it deeply, movement and sensory input and play are all tied to learning and to regulation. So, for anybody who's listening, I would definitely highly recommend looking up your website, which is natureplaykids.ca, I
you
believe,
got it. Yeah,
and also on Instagram, right?
yes,
natureplaykids.ca.
yeah.
You're doing incredible work. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thanks, Lauren. It was very fun to talk to you. I agree. We could have talked for many more hours, but
Yeah,
yeah, thank you for all that you do. And I'll keep listening to your podcast and following your work. And maybe we'll connect in Banff again one of these days. So,
I hope so. Yeah. And for anybody else that's for everybody who's listening, and you want to dive deeper into this kind of work, we are still doing our monthly coaching calls. Which we're working on how to make outdoor learning more inclusive and intentional. So in September, we looked at nature routines, sort of the foundational practices that make outdoor sort of part of your daily rhythm. This past October, we looked at nature journals and documentation and how to scaffold drawing and writing and observation skills outdoors. And upcoming in November, we're going to be exploring universal design for outdoor learning, which was, the perfect segue of having Devon on here. We're going to talk about how to create choice and access and flexibility for every learner in your outdoor space. And it's also the perfect timing with the IEP season coming up. So again, you can learn more about these sessions and other upcoming workshops on Instagram, so teachoutdoors.ca. Thank you again, everybody, for tuning in. And remember that every time we step outside, we are opening the door to learning, to play, to movement, and to connection. So I'll end the podcast with the song From the Trees by Brandon Grant. Bye, everybody.
I start on my path, I look around to find a spot that I can call home for a while. Walking slowly, I feel so calm. I find a spot where nature opens up her arms for me to breathe. I see the stories I can learn from the trees, the feeling, the touch of gentle breeze, knowing the land around me brings me peace, watching the world around me sets me free. I feel the sunshine kiss my skin, I hear all of the birds singing from within. I get familiar with my space. I now know how every part fits in every place for me to breathe. I see the stories I can learn from the trees, the feeling, the touch of gentle breeze, knowing the land around me brings me peace, watching the world around me sets me. I go to visit in morning, in sunshine and the rain, to see what's different and notice the things that stay the same. I get to know my teacher, the spot that gives me health. To get to know the land is to get to know yourself. To breathe, I see the stories I can learn from the trees, the feeling, the touch of gentle breeze, knowing the land around me brings me peace, watching the world around me sets me free.